I'm Karen Chaston, and today we're taking a glimpse into what shaped me. For many years, I took responsibility for my choice to adopt my daughter out. Her father wanted us to get married, but I was 16. Who wants to get married at 16? It was 1973, and the world was very different to the world we live in today. One of the worst things that could have happened to my parents, middle-class Catholic members of society, was having a teenage pregnant daughter. They were shamed by it. My father even said to me, "Don't think you're going to get married." And I hadn't. So they sent me to an unmarried mother's home. Had to be hidden away to make sure no one knew that they had a pregnant, unmarried daughter. So for 5 months, I lived in this Catholic unmarried mother's home. And every day, the nuns, the social workers, even some of the girls in the home would ensure that I knew that the only option for my daughter was to adopt her out to one of these middle-class, wealthy parents who are looking for a child of their own. These parents had to own their own home, as in no debt, and they could provide everything for my daughter that I could not. You're 16, you're still at school. How can you afford to give everything to your daughter, to pay the rent, to look after her and look after yourself? How are you going to do that when you don't even have a job? You haven't even finished school. How are you going to do all of this? Every day they told me that I was the lowest of the low. How dare I have sex before I was married? I was curious. That's all I was. I was curious. I just had to find out what sex was all about. Any other time when you're curious, looking for an answer, looking to understand what it's all about, you're praised, you're celebrated. But of course, this never happened. I was shamed, and I was told continually that if I love my daughter, I will give her to one of these parents who are wealthy, who can give her everything that she needs, desires, and deserves. And of course, I believed them. I was 16. How could I not see that this was the best thing for society? Kim and I reunited in 2001, and I still carry that belief. I thought that I had done the best thing for my daughter, and she should be grateful. I have lived without her for over 27 years. Why shouldn't she be grateful that she was given this better life? But as time went on, and Kim and I started to look into all of this, to look into adoption, the emotional and psychological trauma that had come to her through the early separation from me, her mother, the person that she had been listening to and hearing my heartbeat from the time she was in utero. From 18 weeks, a baby in utero can hear their mother's voice. So she's moving and feeling all the time with me. So we were connected. We were bonded together. The more that we delved into it, the more that we began to realize that in 1968 in America, they were delving into, psychiatrists and psychologists were researching the psychological and emotional trauma that is caused to a baby from early separation from their mother. 1968. In 1965, Pope Paul VI did a speech. It's called the Quotidian et Spes. And in it, he delves into how important it is to keep mother and child together in society. And we should ensure that we do this and no matter what it costs. That is the most important thing, is preserving family and bringing those people together. Mother and child are the most important. 1973, 8 years after Pope Paul VI's speech, and 5 years after the research began, I'm in a Catholic unmarried mother's home where they are ignoring Pope Paul VI and also the research, and they are coercing me to make sure that I adopt my baby out. So why would they do that? Why would they go against the research and the speech about preserving mother and child relationship no matter what? Money. Money. Money is at the basis for so many things. The adoption industry and their practices to ensure that they have a constant supply of babies and money is what is at the basis of the forced adoption practices. Nancy Newton Berrier, in her book, The Primal Wound, she delves into the emotional and psychological trauma caused to the baby, the adoptee. And when she speaks directly to biological mothers, she says, if you ever thought that you could have chosen differently, don't. Because there was no way that you could have ever won against this well-oiled machine, the adoption industry's practices, that always made sure that no matter what they did or said, they would get those adoption papers signed. And when you think about it, here I am in 1973 in an unmarried mother's home where they took a lot more than food and board for my 5 months there from my parents. And then they sold my baby to this wealthy, childless couple for a donation. It's disgusting. So why am I taking responsibility for my choice? Was it even a choice? Recently, Kim asked me, she said, as a person who was a 16-year-old and someone who was raised a 16-year-old, I certainly understand why you didn't want to get married at 16. But did you ever want me? Did you ever want to keep me? And when she asked me that, it hit a really deep wound within me. It was like a kapow, yes. And I thought about it, and I thought, did I ever want her? And my answer is, I never allowed myself. I was never asked. I was never allowed to go down that road. And if I went down it, I couldn't go down it for very long because my parents had made it very, very clear that I wasn't going to get married, that I was adopting my baby out. And it's really, really sad when you think about it, that here I am as a sovereign being. I had no rights. I had no rights in the decision for my baby, for what was best for my baby. I was brainwashed into thinking that if I love my baby, I will give her away to this childless, wealthy couple who can give her everything that I cannot. It's so sad. And what makes it even sadder is that most people in society are so wrapped up, entwined, with the beliefs that the biological mother gave away their child. I didn't give away my child. I never had my child. I never took her home. I held her 3 times in hospital, and each time they were telling me that they're breaking the law, but we'll let you see your baby now, which they weren't. I had a 6-week provocation period where I could spend as much time with my child to ensure that I have made the right decision for us both. We saw her 3 times, and each time we felt we were sneaking in and we were breaking the law and we were so brave. Years later, I find out that we were allowed to do that. So here they are telling us that we're not allowed to do it. In 2013, the then Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, did a national apology for the forced adoption era practices. And in it, she said that they were brutal, they were immoral, they were inhumane. The way that they treated the biological mothers and made them feel less than in so many ways, the way they shamed them, and also the way their practices in many cases were illegal. So did I have a choice? Was I right in keeping that choice and thinking that I had done the right thing by my baby? The Catholic Church sold my baby, and they coerced me into believing for many, many years. Up until 2017, I believed that I had done the right thing by my baby and that I had given her that better life. It's not good. And in 2017, I apologized to Kim. I always wanted my baby. I just was never allowed to keep my baby. And society and my parents and the world at that time ensured that she was given up for adoption. It was never my choice. For many years, I didn't have an identity as a biological mother. I kept Liza's birth and subsequent adoption very close within. I very rarely talked about it with many people. My parents knew about it, and their counselling after I came home was literally, well, that's over now. We don't need to talk about it. My siblings all knew about it. And my parents informed me that I was a fallen woman, and it was very unlikely that anyone else would want me. So I continued dating her father for quite a while, much to my parents' disgust. We even got engaged, though not long before my 18th birthday, I decided I wanted to be a teenager. I didn't care if no one would ever want me for the rest of my life. I just wanted to live. I wanted to leave it all behind. And so I went out and I started dating. I always told my boyfriends, not that I had that many before I met my husband, I always told them about it. I always felt that I wanted to be open and honest. And there was a little bit inside of me that when I think about it now, it was, well, if they can't accept that about me, well, then they're not the right person for me. And I understand that many biological mothers choose to keep it a secret, but I just knew that I couldn't live that lie, and there's no judgment against them at all in any way. Please don't take it that way. It's just that for me, I wanted to be open and honest. The secrecy of being in the unmarried mother's home, like one of my grandmothers never even knew that I had been pregnant. And so it wasn't easy. And I just felt if I'm going to date someone and potentially who knows where it leads, I just want to be open and honest. but I did keep it a secret. The 70s and 80s and 90s, they were into shaming people even more so than now. And everyone was so judgmental. And yes, they are still now. But it was like everyone was trying to get this thing against you to bring you down, to find that core wound where they can bring you down, chop you down. It's so the Australian way, isn't it? Who do you think you are to stand tall? I'm going to find something that I can chop you down with. So it was kept a secret for a very long time. And then in Australia in the early 90s, the adoption laws changed and we were allowed, they were no longer as closed as what they were. And I could apply for her adoptive birth certificate and she was allowed to apply for her original birth certificate. And her original birth certificate is Liza Mary, which is such a beautiful name. It was such a shame that her adoptive parents didn't keep Liza Mary. I named her Liza after Liza Minnelli. Before I became pregnant, I had seen Cabaret, which was just amazing to me from the eyes of a 15-year-old, how I looked at her on stage, especially when she was on stage. And she was amazing. The way she would move, the grace, she was so talented. She was so strong, the things that she did. And she was so confident, everything that I wanted for Liza. Of course, when I saw that movie years later through adults' eyes, she was certainly all that on stage, but off stage, she was the most insecure woman you would ever meet. And I guess it was good that I never saw that as a 15-year-old because I really did love the name Liza. And Mary was after my paternal grandmother, who was amazing. She was there for me all the time, especially when I was in the home for those 5 months. Though I decided in 95 after a couple of things that happened. And one of them was that I read an article that many adoptees will never search for their birth parents because they feel they've been rejected once and they won't be rejected again. And it was approaching Kim's 22nd birthdays, and Kim is her adoptive name. And I had been going to clairvoyance mediums since I was 21 and just to check in on her because I was always worried about her, especially as I grew and I became aware that I wanted to make sure that she was mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually safe, that nothing was happening to her. So I really wanted to check in on her. And every time I did, I'd go once or twice a year from the time I was 21 to make sure that she was okay. And they would always say, she'll contact you when she's 21. So I was waiting and it was fast approaching her 22nd and she hadn't contacted me. So I decided to reach out and find her adoptive birth certificate, which was very easy. I took all the necessary documentation, proof of who I was, to Sydney because I was living on the Gold Coast then. And within 6 weeks, I had her adoptive birth certificate. And one of the greatest shock was her mother was a month older than my mother, which really surprised me. She was 43 when she adopted her, and I was like, oh, so she's technically been raised by her grandmother. So that's when I took on the identity of being a biological mother. Over the years, I had, confided in trusted friends that what had happened. But then I sort of took it on and I started telling more people in, certain scenarios. But I owned it more. It was like, yes, there's a possibility that she can be in my life. Though I hadn't shared it with my 3 sons from my marriage. My husband had always known. He had just went, yeah, okay, sort of thing. He wasn't phased in any way, as most people, shouldn't be. Though over the years, I have had people going, "What do you mean you had sex at this age?" And I'm like, "Hey, wait on. I've been shamed by the nuns. You can't shame me over this. Seriously, what age were you when you had sex?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're right," sort of thing. But there can be a male female thing in all of that. Totally understand what society is like now. Though what's really fascinating is I did never know when to tell my sons. Because what age is the right age? I still really don't know the right answer, especially as they're approaching the teenage years. The last thing I wanted to do was tell them about that they had a sister who they may or may not have in their life, and also give them a free get out of jail free card to have sex at any age, because that's what you were doing, Mum, so you can't tell me not to do it. Though eventually, of course, I did tell them, and that's when I really owned it. And because there was a possibility, because I had written a letter to Kimberly, in 1996, and she replied in 2001. So those 5 years, it was just after I received the letter that I decided to tell the boys. They were 16, the twins were 16, and the eldest was 20. And yeah, that's when I really became and took on the biological mother persona. But for many years, even though I took it on, my beliefs were that a biological mother is not really the mother. Yes, I am her mother, right? And she even calls me mum now, which is amazing. It's taken a long time. So what it is I had given away my rights. So I had also given away my rights to tell her what to do, to suggest, to give her advice, to be a mother. She was a grown 27-year-old woman who was a mother herself. And so I wasn't about to tell her how to do things. I hadn't been in her life for that 27 years where I would have earned the right to suggest and to be there for her. So I definitely took a back seat, and which I guess is part of our tumultuous years in our reunion relationship, is because I felt and I believed I didn't have the right to be there as a mother for her, and especially as a grandmother. One of our first misunderstandings was that when Kim replied to my letter 5 years later in the April of 2001, in the September of 2000, she had her first child, her daughter. And so when her first birthday was approaching and I knew about it and I knew when her birthday was, I sent her a present. And Kim phoned me and thanked me, but said, "Look, I don't want you to do that." So I just went, "Oh, okay." And because of my belief, I went, "Okay, she's clearly saying, I am not the grandmother. Do not act like the grandmother. Do not be there for the grandmother." And then, of course, it wasn't that was what she was saying. She was just being polite and saying, "Look, I don't want anything from you. Don't think I want anything from you." But she did actually love the present. And then she wondered why there was no more presents because, throughout the years, especially as she had her next couple of children. But it took us a long time to come to that understanding. So my identity as a biological mother has gone through a lot of different phases throughout the years, because it was in denial for a long time. It was shamed for a long time. It was, I don't have the right to be this person. And then it's grown into, you are my mom. So, of course, I'm embracing that. And I'm so grateful that I am in her life and I can be her mum, and that I am the wise woman now through life experiences. Wouldn't it be great if we had the wisdom when we were young? Oh my God, how different would life be if we had the wisdom we have when we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. Though, of course, that's what the journey is all about, is the experiences that create the wisdom. But now it's so amazing that I not only honor being a biological mother, and I tell everyone, and I am not shamed about it. And if people have issue with it, It's where they're at. And I know that. And if they want to go on, I will actually, as a life coach, I can gently guide them to actually go, so what is your issue around this? And why do you think you have a say in who I am and how I've lived my life? What gives you that power or right to even think so? So yeah, pity I didn't have that sort of wisdom when I was 16, isn't it? But no, now I have no issue with my biological mother identity. After adopting Liza Mary out, I decided I didn't want to go back and finish my last year of high school. I was changed. How could I not be? I had just carried and given birth to a daughter, to beautiful Liza Mary. So I went to work. I started working in a bank. And my boyfriend, her father, worked not far from me. We both worked in the city of Sydney. And we would catch up for lunch most days because we were in walking distance of each other. We had another friend, a male friend, Michael, who would have lunch with us most days. And after a little while, after giving Kim up for adoption, I received a photo of her in a letter just to let me know that she was doing well. And I had this photo and I carried this photo with me all the time. And I would look at it all the time. And then one day, Michael said to me, Karen, what are you doing to yourself? You're never going to see her again. You are setting yourself up for failure. You're never going to see her again. And I totally understand why you want to hold her photo and keep her photo and look at it, but you can't keep talking about her. You can't keep bringing her up. It's not healthy for you. You have to realize that she's gone. She's now with her parents. They're her parents, not you. And it really hit home. It he was right. He's right. I have given her up for adoption. She's no longer my daughter. I'll always think of her as my daughter, but I can't keep talking about her. So I buried it. I stopped talking about her. Her father and I would occasionally talk about her, but we also knew that that wasn't doing us any good. It would just put us into more and more grief. And so we buried it. We both buried it, which is probably why I just knew I couldn't marry him. I couldn't live and look at him and know that I was the one who had stopped us having a complete family, the three of us. So I buried it. And how did I bury it? I buried it like most people bury it, through their not so ideal behaviors, through behaviors which are avoidance behaviors. I started drinking. I was underage, but that didn't stop us back in 1973, 74. It wasn't that hard to walk into pubs and have a drink. I drank. I would eat. I would get angry. All the usual. I'd shop. I would do all the avoidance behaviors. When you look at the avoidance behaviors, you sort of go, they're all socially accepted. Food, alcohol, drugs aren't so much, but they're certainly there. Not that I do any to drugs, thank goodness. I was bad enough on alcohol. Working too much. I threw myself into my work and I thrived and I loved it and I was good at it and I was recognized. So why wouldn't I just do that? But it was all avoidance. It was me pushing it down and pushing it down and moving myself away from the experience. So it became more and more in the background because I had no therapy. I don't think anyone would go to therapy back in the 70s. It was certainly didn't have a great reputation. It didn't, even now people avoid it. Why do I need a therapist? So I avoided it. And I got further and further and further away of the traumatic experiences of being in the home, of being shamed, of giving birth. And it was a horrific birth. It was a 33 hours and it was not good. And in hindsight, Kim and I say to her, I like to think it was you saying, oh, I'm staying with my mum for as long as I can because I know what happens as soon as I come into the world. I'm going to lose you. Thanks for that. It was not very good at all. But anyway, the grief. I don't remember a lot of it. I don't remember signing the adoption papers. It's a bit of a haze. And that's what we do with grief and loss. We don't understand it. We just bury it. Which is why after Dan passed, I had to dive further into grief and loss. I had to understand it. I even wrote a book on it, Demystifying Loss. I needed to understand it. But I was well into my 50s then. So why does it take us so long? Why do we avoid it? Because it's painful. It's because I made the wrong choice. I want my daughter. I want her here. I want to be with her. I want to see her grow. I want to be able to touch her, to tell her, to hold her, how much I love her. But I gave away those rights. So we bury it with avoidance behaviors. We all do it. We all think it's socially accepted. Why not do it? So that's what I did. I avoided for a very long time. And then we're in reunion. And for a very long time, I continued to avoid my grief and my loss and telling her how good it's been for both of us. See, my choice was right because that makes sense. You've had the perfect life. Little did I know that she was telling me she thought I wanted to hear. And of course, I was feeding her, look how great our lives are. I made the right choice for both of us. So of course she kept doing that. So we're in that cycle. But then it gets to a stage where you go, I want an authentic relationship with you. I want you in my life. I don't want you on the peripheral. I want you in my life. I want to have a mother-daughter relationship that I have longed for all my life. I had 3 boys. I wanted that mother-daughter relationship. I didn't even have what I thought was an ideal mother relationship with my own mother. That obviously was never going to happen because deep down inside me, she was the one that chose for me. And it wasn't the right decision for me. It may have been for her and dad and society, but it wasn't the right decision for me or her first grandchild. Yes, she ended up with 20 grandchildren, but she gave away her first grandchild. So we were never going to have that closeness that I had desired with my daughter. So we had to dive into it. And it wasn't really until Dan passed in 2013 that I avoided that as well. I ran straight back to work as quick as I could. But I knew that I had to. And I knew that if I didn't, I was probably going to blow myself up. Who knows? Heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, because I was still avoiding the things that I shouldn't. So that's what I did. And deep diving into loss and writing Demystifying Loss, it all helped, but it all helped me when I was made redundant in 2013 from my much loved CFO role of a publicly listed company. It was the greatest gift that could have happened because it made me stop. It made me look at me in the mirror and go, I don't like anything about you. Look at who you have become. You're so angry, you're overweight, you are not thriving in any area of your life. You need to look at it. You think you are, but you're not. It's not what success is in any way. So that's what I did. I deep dived into it. And through that deep dive into it, that's when I apologized to Kim for all of my beliefs, for all of my missteps, for everything that I had done incorrectly, everything that I thought I was doing for her. I wasn't. I was doing it to her. And then, thankfully, we started seeing each other. Hasn't been easy in any way, believe me. We thought our relationship before was tumultuous. Believe me, at times we still go into it. But the beauty is we both believe in us. We both want this relationship. We've both longed for it for so long. And the only way you can have it is for you to dive deep into all of your grief, all of your loss. You need to get it out of your body and into the light so that you can look at it, so that you can unwrap it, so you can go, oh, so you can learn and grow, so you stop making those wrong choices. You stop doing those avoidance behaviors. I stopped drinking at the end of 2018 for 1 year. I decided no alcohol because I knew that whenever Kim and I got together and we were both drinking, we would always end up walking away from each other, not very happy. And it would be a while before we saw each other again. And that was not ideal. That is something I did not want in any way. If I could have, I would have seen her every day. So I decided I'll do it easy. And 1 year, I gave myself a year alcohol free. And I got to the end of 2019 and I went, everyone's like, what are you going to do? You're going to start drinking again? What are you going to do? And I looked at me and I looked at my relationships and I looked at her and I went, I haven't missed it. I haven't craved it. Every relationship has improved because I haven't been drinking. Why would I drink? Now, this is a person that used to drink a bottle of wine every day. And I wondered why. I was overweight and things weren't working out for me. Seriously. Avoidance, 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 avoidance. So that's what I did. I dived into me, my grief, my loss, everything that I had longed for, everything that didn't happen the way I had hoped it had happened. And then I became a person who was now able to create a relationship, to co-create a relationship with my beautiful daughter. Yes, at times we don't do so well, but 95% of the time we do. We do really well. And we're in a place where we are continually looking to ensure that we are both individually better than yesterday me, but we're also collectively making sure that we're better than yesterday us. And that's what we need to do with grief and loss. Everyone. It's not easy in any way. But the beautiful thing is that when you start, the right people show up to assist you to make the road easier because more than likely they've walked a similar road and they know how to make it easier for you. And that's the beauty of saying, I'm ready to dive deep into me and to create the best version of me where I am continually my own best friend. Around the time I was 21 in 1978, I started going to clairvoyance to check in on Kim, to make sure she's safe, to make sure she's living that better life. I was worried that she may have been abused in some ways, mentally, emotionally, sexually, and I needed to check in. I needed to make sure she was safe. I was so worried that that wasn't the case. Thankfully, I was always told that she was safe, she was living that better life, she was loved, she was just thriving and growing and just amazing. So I always was grateful that I had that way of checking in on her. I knew that we were emotionally connected. I knew that I could feel her, and I was hoping that she could feel me. Though I always was told, even from the first visit, that she would contact me when she's 21. So that gave me we're going to have a reunion. We are going to reunite. Didn't know how that was possible. It was closed adoption. The records were sealed. They were never going to be changed. And then in 1991 in Australia, they changed the law. I could apply for her adoptive birth certificate, and she could apply for for her original birth certificate. And I didn't know that at first, though. I didn't know that in 1991. In 1991, I knew that I could register my name and say that I am open for contact, for reunion, and she could do likewise. And if we both did it, they would match it and then they would reach out to us. So I did that in 1991. And then it wasn't until later, probably around 94, 95, that I became aware that I could apply for her adopted birth certificate. And in that year, a couple of things happened. My dad had a stroke, and I read in a magazine that adoptees very rarely contact their birth parents because they feel they've been rejected once and they wouldn't be rejected again. And it was fast approaching her 22nd birthday. So I decided to to reach out and to apply and receive her her adoptive birth certificate. So that all happened, and then I received it 6 weeks later, and then I sent her a letter that I never thought I would ever send because I always thought I had no right to intrude on her life. I had given her up, but I wanted reunion. And I had been told at that stage, oh, for 16, 17 years that she was going to contact me, and the year's fast ending and she hasn't done it. So maybe it is me that has to do it. I can't wait any longer. I want to see her. I want to touch her. I want to hug her. I want to make sure that she has lived this better life, that my pain and suffering was okay because she has lived this better life. So I did that. I sent her the letter, and 5 years later, she responded. And then, of course, I wrote back to her the very next day, which freaked her out a little bit. I found out years later because she had taken 5 years, and apparently many drafts in that 5 years that she just couldn't send. And I respond the next day. But I'd been waiting so long. And that's when we began our reunion journey. And me being me, I pushed, pushed. I didn't go at the pace of the slowest person. I didn't honor that. I I wanted to meet her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to have my family meet her, who had always wondered about her. And I read my letter to my mum because she was away at the time when read Kim's letter to at the time. And, she was like, oh, thank God you know, thank God she's had that good life. And, I never really spoke to my parents about their loss and grief, about their decision to give away their first grandchild. So who knows how they had suffered throughout the years, especially them being older and wiser. I'm surprised they even did it in the first place. But anyway, that was their life journey. That was their choices. So reunion began, and so I received the letter in the April, and by the December we physically met. In between, we'd had a few letter exchanges and a couple of faxes, and then I thought she's never going to phone me, so I'm going to phone her. So I phoned her. We spoke for about an hour, and then I decided to fly to Sydney and meet her. And I was going alone, and she decided to come alone as well, even though she had a lot of people who were there to come with her and support her. And it was a lovely meeting. It was so beautiful. And as I looked at her, I could see, I have 5 sisters and a brother, and I could see all of their features throughout her. And I could even see a little bit of her father's auntie in her. And it was so great. And of course, I wanted more and more and more and more. And then eventually, I decided to move to Sydney. I decided to move back to Sydney. I had left Sydney when I was 19 to move to the Gold Coast. And the boys were all fast growing up by now. And it was time. It was time for me to go back to Sydney, to be closer to her. She lived in an area in Sydney where if we had stayed, my husband and I had stayed in Sydney, that's where we would have lived, which is very coincidentally, but then there's no coincidences in life. As you get older, you start to realize that. And so we moved back, my husband and I. The boys were all off traveling and doing all their own thing by then. So it was probably one of the worst mistakes I could have made from her perspective. Unknowingly, I parked myself in between where she lived and where her adoptive parents lived, which wasn't good. She wasn't happy. I wasn't saying the things that I should be saying. I was just being me. I was very needy, and I am not a needy person in any way. So that didn't help at all. And eventually I came to a stage where I have to stop this. I have to stop this. I cannot be this person. This is not me. And I sobbed and sobbed after a fight and misunderstanding we had. And I sobbed probably all night, and I released it. It was the best thing that ever happened for me. I needed to release my neediness, I have to make sure you're safe. I need to make up for time. I need to. And of course, we never can. I had missed her growing years. And we hadn't really dealt into our traumas at that stage. So this went on for quite a few years, and it wasn't easy. Kim started to feel different when we were together. She could feel the biological connection, the longing. She could feel it more. Not that she ever shared that with me at that stage. And then Dan passed. Her half-brother passed in 2011. And that was 8 years after I had been living in Sydney, which wasn't good, and it wasn't good for her. She wasn't able to come to his funeral because we decided to have the funeral on the Gold Coast, and that wasn't good for her. But she was grieving, and no one around her said to her, of course you're grieving. You're grieving a lost relationship, a relationship that you can never now have with him. But no one ever said that, because everyone was like, why are you grieving him? Who's he to you? Of course, not realizing, because it was a big secret, our relationship. Not many people knew about it. Not many people were open to it. Why would you want that? You've had a perfect life. Everything is great. And of course, I wasn't aware of all of this that was happening either. So eventually, after I left my corporate life, and that's when I did the deep dive into me, and I started to really work on me and to become my own best friend. That's when we started very slowly. We still had a lot of very big fights, but at least I woke up enough to apologize for her for my choice. And apparently that was what she was waiting for, because how could she have a relationship with me if I didn't even apologize? And I wasn't going to apologize because I was so deep into my beliefs that I thought she should be grateful to me. I've given her this life and I've suffered and she hasn't, and everything's great. And of course, it wasn't for either of us. So that's when we really started to look at us and start to put us first and start to realize that everyone else in the world separated us and are happy with that separation and want to keep us separated and do not want us to come together. So many people in her life were saying that. And then eventually we were like, but what do we want? What do we want? And we chose each other. So that's when we started to stop hurting each other and to come together in a way that we could honor each other. Start to look at each other's journey, to understand it, and not to fix it, not to heal it. That's our own responsibility. But we can certainly walk beside them and we can acknowledge it and ask questions so we can understand it, so that we can validate it, so that we can ask them to keep talking and to keep sharing their deep feelings and thoughts. And a common trait for many adoptees is that they live in what we now call the swamp of BS thoughts. And they ruminate in it, and they need to get it into the light so that they can see it and they can realize that, yes, it doesn't have that control on me and it doesn't have that hold on me. And when we bring it into the light and when we discuss it and we share it and, and we share our misunderstandings over the years. Oh, we've had so many misunderstandings where I've said black and she's heard white and we're both separated, misunderstanding each other and carrying that for however long. And no wonder we would, see each other twice a year, even though we lived 10 kilometers away from each other, probably even closer at times. So that's our reunion journey. And as we really started to honor us, and we're still in the process, it will be a forever process, but we're both here for each other and we're both not going anywhere and we're both listening. And that's the hardest thing for most people, especially in reunion, is to listen. And also to make sure that they're sharing what is true for them, not what they think you want to hear. Because for many years, that's what Kim did. And of course, I'm off, this is what she said, so this is what it is, not realizing that deep within, she has this silent screamer, this wounded inner child who wants to tell me the truth, but has no language, has no voice, has never been encouraged to voice what she is feeling and thinking. So that's the journey that we've been on. And that's the journey of reunion. And that's why I decided I had to find out what happened to her, what that journey was. And that's when I started creating the emotional fingerprint of an adoptee for me and for her. And when I created the first one, the first of the 8 essential lessons, the conception to 6 weeks, I had dived into these themes, these 8 themes for that first life stage. And then I read them to Kim. And I definitely said it very badly when I explained what is it about. She thought that I was writing about her life, and how dare you? You haven't even walked in it. I'm going, no, I'm not writing about your life. I'm writing about the emotional and psychological trauma and where it stems from and how we can understand it, how we can deep dive into all of these different themes within this life stage so we can understand what happened to you. And and when I read it to her and she went, oh, this is really good. Yes, it needs my input, which I gladly accepted because I haven't walked in her shoes. I can research and I can listen to what she has said over the years, but it needs to be a co-creation. And that's what it is. And the whole essence of it was initially for me to understand her more, but it's just grown because it took us so long nearly 2 decades for us to come to a place where we could literally be in the same room for more than 2 hours. We could go away for weekends, and now we're away for fortnights, which for the American viewers is 2 weeks. And it's just amazing that we so love being in each other's company. But it was because of this understanding and how it all started from conception, from our connection that we developed while she was in utero, through her listening to me, through her hearing my heartbeat, her moving with me, her even taking on the emotions. Imagine my emotions 5 months in the unmarried mother's home, what she was taking on, what she was listening to all of the people telling me that I have to give her up for adoption, that I have to separate. I'm pretty sure she was inside screaming, "Do not listen to them. No way, you cannot listen to them. We have to stay together." And unfortunately, I didn't hear her. I didn't feel her. I didn't understand her journey. Reunion is not easy, but thankfully, we are in a really good space. Sure, we still have misunderstandings. That's a relationship. What relationship doesn't have misunderstandings at times? Of course we do. But we're here. We're not going anywhere. Neither of us are going anywhere until we go on to our next adventure, of course. But that's a long way off. We've got way too much to do before then, because we're here to ensure that we have the relationship where we do continually ensure that we are individually better than yesterday me, and together we are better than yesterday us, but more importantly, that we can help people, society, to understand that adoption begins with loss. It doesn't begin when the adoptive parents take their child home. They have a blueprint long before they are placed into your arms. And the more people understand that, the more that they can ensure that the child is understood, heard, validated, and loved for who they are, not for who you want them to be. That's the reunion journey. And of course, I would have loved that I had been with her entire life. But as that was not possible, and we can't go back and change it, we are ensuring that we are co-creating the most ideal mother-daughter relationship that has ever been co-created. When you've experienced everything that comes with you adopting your child out, it's an experience that you keep close. You don't readily share it with everyone. More than likely, you've been shamed because of it. And you don't really want to give that secret to just anyone. You keep it close. And this can affect relationships. From your perspective, you are wondering if they are the right person to share it with. Will they keep it close? Will they honor you? Will they shame you over your experience? So it does affect relationships because you have this secret and you're the one that decides when you share it. I shared it early with my boyfriends after I stopped dating Kim's father because I didn't want to have a secret. I didn't want this big dark cloud over our relationship. So I shared. And the boyfriends I shared it with, not that I had that many, just were matter of fact about it. Yeah, so what? They didn't care. They understood. They have life experiences that says, yeah, that could have been me so easily. So that was good. That was okay. So I got validation. Okay, I can share when the moment is right. But for a long time, I kept it as a secret. I I had shame around it. My parents had told me that I was damaged goods. So of course I wasn't going to let people know and have a tick, yep, you are, sort of thing. Though as time went on, I would share it with trusted friends, and they all honoured it. They never used it against me, as some of them could further down the line. As we all know, friendships are not always here for a long time. They only may be here for a short time. So it does affect relationships, though. I'm sure that it affected my relationship with my parents and with my siblings. They all had their beliefs about what happened and what didn't happen, from their perspective of whatever age they were when I experienced all of that. And they have their own beliefs. Whether it fitted in with them or it didn't is their journey. But I'm sure it affected my relationship with my parents. As I've shared earlier, my relationship with my children, they did accept it, the boys. They did accept it when I told them about Kim, Liza Mary, who had become Kim, and they have run with it. They have embraced her into their life. And it was just a shame that Dan, before he passed in 2011, only had a few occasions to meet her because we weren't on a regular contact at that stage. But the greatest relationships is obviously that it's affected is the relationship with me. I've done that journey. I've healed myself. I've reconciled my choice. Then with Kim, it's been a journey with us coming to where we are. But it's her children and her adoptive parents. Unfortunately, they never wanted to meet me. They didn't want to have anything to do with me. She wasn't allowed to discuss our relationship with them, which is such a shame. It's such a shame. You know, there are so many different relationships in the world today. And there's no reason why we couldn't have been a, a family that has come together to honor her nature and nurture. It would have been no reason why. Now, I understand why, as they aged, having me around would not have been ideal. I'm 27 years younger than them. I'm obviously more active, and as you age, you do become more insecure, especially as you physically become not as active as what you were. I understand that. I totally understand that the mirroring that Kim and I have going on wouldn't have been ideal for them. That would have clearly said, well, as much as we've raised you as our daughter, you're not really. Like, all you got to do is look at the two of you and you can clearly see that you're related. And the same with her children. You can certainly see a lot of it. And her relationship with the extended family, my siblings and their children and their grandchildren. It's just such a shame that we don't have those memories over the past 20 years or plus that we've been in reunion for. There could have been so many more occasions. There could have been so many more relationships that could have naturally developed. So for her, she would have had more one-to-one relationships with all of my siblings and their children, and so many memories with that, because her daughter was born the same year as my brother's son, which is my youngest mother's grandchild, my parents' youngest grandchild. They were both born in the same year. So of course they could have had many happy memories together. So it does affect adoption. Adoption does affect relationships, and it's the extended family. And it's important for everyone to understand that a choice that was made so long ago in different times, it's sad that it continues to affect ongoing relationships for all of them. And there are so many one-to-one relationships that could have actually enhanced everyone's lives if that was allowed to happen. I am very sad that her children have grown up without me being able to see them on a regular basis, without me being able to spend time with them so that we could develop a relationship. I didn't expect to be the grandmother. I didn't expect to be called the grandmother. It wouldn't have worried me. My grandchildren from the boys, they call me Nana Kaz. And, there's no reason why they just couldn't have called me Kaz. That's what my family call me. So it would have been just lovely. And I could have been just like this crazy auntie who just came in and out of their lives. And it's such a shame that the adoptive parents chose to stop all of that from happening. And I understand their beliefs and I understand their understanding, and they were not happy that the Australian laws changed in 91. They thought it was going to be a closed adoption forever. And I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to what is best for my child. And for both parents, biological and adoptive parents, to ask that, what is best for my child? That is the only question that should come in it. Not what's best for me, not what's best for you. I don't want you to win. I don't want me to lose, all these sort of things. Love is an infinite supply. It is in infinite supply. And when we feel that, well, if they love you, they won't love me, we need to dive into ourselves. We need to ask, why do we believe this? Because there is space and capacity for everyone to get on. And the relationship, I would have loved to have had a relationship with her adoptive parents. I did end up meeting her adoptive mother, but that wasn't until 2022, 21? No, 21. In 2021, I met her, and that was a year before she passed. It's just so sad. It's so sad. And she turned around and she said to me, "Oh my God, this is lovely. Why haven't we done this before?" And that's what's so sad. We could have done it many times. And I feel, actually, I know that I would have honored and respected them. And I would never, ever have taken that role of them being grandparents away from them, because they had earned that. They had been there when I could not be there for Kim. So, of course, they deserved to be grandparents, but there was still room for all of us. So, if you're in that situation, always ask, what is best for my child, the adoptee? What is best for them? Because they are the ones that didn't choose anything. And if they had been asked, more than likely, they would have said, I want to stay with my mum. I've already bonded with her. I've been moving with her for these past 9 months. So every relationship deserves to have the time that they can spend with the beautiful adoptee who is part of both families. Let them bring their nature and nurture together and have that honoured so that they can become complete and whole. It's only in the last few years that I have connected my parenting style to the adoption of Kim. My eldest son was born in 81 and the twins in 84. And I never really connected it. I just thought that we were unusual in the way that we parented, my husband and me, but we just thought it was just us. For example, when I had my eldest son, I ran back to work 6 months later. I was working in a bank then, and I could not get back to work quick enough. I also never breastfed him. I felt it was my mother who had turned me off breastfeeding, though it wasn't in hindsight. I never breastfed Kim. So why would I be so inclined to breastfeed my boys when they came along? And of course, when I had twins, well, it was a very easy decision to bottle feed both of them as opposed to breastfeeding. And when I went back to work, I more or less became the main income earner. My husband was working from home and he had a plant nursery, so he could stay home with the kids. So it made sense for me to go to work. And I continued to do that. Even 6 months after I had the twins, I went to work at Dreamworld for a 4 week period. And I ended up staying 14 years, which was really a great decision. But yes, it's so interesting to look back and to connect the dots that was I worthy to be a mother? Was I the one to take on the responsibility? I had been shamed and told that I can't be a mother. I'm not worthy to be a mother. I can't support them. So I guess that was ingrained into me. So by me saying, well, I'm going to work, that was my way, yes, subconsciously, of saying, well, I need to be the provider. I need to ensure that I can support the family. Of course, my husband could have supported us. It just worked out easier that he was home anyway. Why both of us be home when we can bring in the double income? But it's incredible when you think back that that's my parenting style. And it just worked so well for us. And it was so unusual in the 80s to have a house husband. And we just thought, oh, well, aren't we sort of innovative and the way we just do this and it just all flows? But no, so many things are connected to who you are. And now they're all, apart from Dan, who passed away when he was 27, the boys are in their 40s and Kim's in her 50s. Though it just flows now. We are together, everyone embraces her, but the parenting style, of course, once your children are adults, and that's what it's about, isn't it? And it's not easy for parents to become empty nesters and to have your children go out into the world, especially when I'm having Kim come in at a very similar time. But it worked out well. Well, for me, it worked out well that when they did start to venture out into the world, I could move back to Sydney and stay there for 15 years and develop our relationship. But the funny thing is, our relationship really started to take off when I moved back, to the Gold Coast to be around, because the boys were starting to have their children, to be there for them. And it works. It doesn't work, to be honest, because there is distance, physical distance between Kim and I that we are always navigating. And even though she comes quite regularly to stay because her children are now adults, so it makes it easier for her to be able to travel, back and forth, and likewise for me. Though there is that distance. But yes, I find it fascinating that I had never connected the dots of the way that I parented, and my husband obviously parented with me. The way that we did that relates so much back to that brainwashing for 5 months and the beliefs that I took on and lived with for so many years, never questioning them. it is interesting how we don't question our beliefs, and they ask the simple question, is it even my belief? Or is it someone else's that I have taken on? And does it serve me? And is it true? And more often than not, the answers are always no, it's not true. Beliefs, we look at that word and right in the middle is LIE, a lie. And our beliefs are lies that we take on for so long and think they're gospel. And of course, they may not be. So our subconscious is working overtime and making us to be who we think we are. So deep dive in to everything in your life. That's what I really would love to share, to part that wisdom onto everyone. And that is just me looking at what happened in the past and then coming forward and going, wow, that was so much more connected to my previous experiences than what I ever thought or gave it credit for. When I became pregnant at 16, I was in high school, fifth form, which is the equivalent of year 11 in Australia today. I thought I was going to become a teacher. Though after being pregnant and giving birth and subsequently adopting my daughter out, I felt I couldn't go back to school to complete my final year. So I went to work and I chose a bank, which I stayed with for 10 years. And as I was always good with numbers, I very quickly rose through the ranks. Though 10 years later, after giving birth to the twins, I wanted something different. And this opportunity just came to me. 4 weeks work at Dreamworld, a theme park in Australia, counting money. And those 4 weeks turned into 14 years. It was a great place to work and it was so much fun. How could it not be? It's a theme park. Though, what happened in the round 95, a CFO, my boss, he said to me, Karen, you are never going to get paid what you're worth until you go and get that bit of paper. Best advice I've ever received. So very quickly, I found myself working full time, studying at Bond University, a private university in Australia that has 3 semesters a year. So, and because of my 10-year or 20-year work experience, because I was 38 by this stage, I was able to go straight into a master's instead of an undergrad. And this I thrived at. I loved it. It was so great, studying and working. The only problem is that I didn't really look after me as much as I could have. But anyway, in 2 and a third years, I had completed my master's. Very quickly completed my CPA, and then I was an accountant that could go anywhere in the world. And as the boys were traveling, my husband and I decided we could move back to Sydney. I'd never really lived there as an adult because I left when I was 19. That, and of course, the core reason being Kim lives in Sydney, I decided that that would be a great place for us. And it was. I quickly started to thrive in what I was doing professionally, rising the ranks, becoming a financial controller, and then the owner of that hotel that I was working at the time then offered me an opportunity to go and work as a CFO in a publicly listed company that he was a director of and a major shareholder. So that's what we did. And that's where I really thrived. So by then, here I am, nearly 50, and I am not in a great space physically. Okay. I thought I was. I knew I was overweight. But what I never realized was how much I was using unhealthy avoidance tactics to get through the day. I was the first person in and the last person to leave every day. If anyone ever said to me, how do you cope with stress? I would have said, I never get stressed. And my assumption was correct because I was always in this heightened state. I never went up and down. I was always in a high. I never came down. And the fact that I was drinking a bottle of wine every day just to get through the day and get through everything that I needed to do was not healthy in any way. And of course, when you're aware and when you start to, and you honestly believe that there are no coincidences in the world, you start to look back, and I can clearly see how the world decided to go, Karen, you're not looking after yourself. And then Dan passed. In 2011, he passed. And I didn't want to be a grieving mother in any way. So the day after his funeral, I went straight back to work. Avoidance, avoidance, avoidance. I can't deal with losing another child. Like, I've already lost one, and that relationship, even though she's back in my life, isn't great. I can't lose another child. So I worked harder and I drank more and I continued to be in total avoidance. And then, of course, 15 months later, the universe grabbed me and said, hey, you didn't wake up when Dan passed. Here's another loss event for you to deal with. And if you don't wake up from this, there'll be more and there'll be more and there'll be more, which I feel would have been health issues. So I was made redundant from my much loved CFO role. The company was merging with another, and through that merger process, I became redundant. Now, if Dan hadn't passed, that would have been the worst thing for me. My job was my identity. So how on earth was I going to cope without my identity? In hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened because it assisted me to stop. And that's what we all need to do. When any loss comes into our life, we have to stop. But what do? We don't. We avoid more and avoid more and avoid more and push it down and push it down and push it down until it becomes so depressed, so suppressed, it becomes depressed, which turns it into depression. And we wonder why we don't know how to deal with loss. It's because we don't stop. We just keep on going. But thankfully, I stopped. And my first step was for me to look in the mirror at who I was. And there was nothing about the person who reflected back that I liked. But I vowed to actually become my own best friend, because that is the place where I knew I needed to be to heal me, to look after me, to put my own oxygen mask on first. So that's what happened. And from there, I went into become a life coach, and I dived into loss. And through that process of diving into loss, I eventually not only became my own best friend, but then I looked and I went, I now need to understand Kim. I need to understand what has happened to her. Why? Why is she the way she is? What has happened to her? And that is how we co-created our amazing mother-daughter relationship, because of the journey of me looking at myself and saying, I don't like who you are. And your career was not there for you. You gave up your health and your emotions, and you suppressed so much just to get through the day. You got lost. You turned very masculine. You turned angry. You were not living and loving your life. And that stopping was the best thing I could have done, not only for myself, but for my relationship with my beautiful daughter and for every single relationship that I have in my life. Your career will only take you so far. And what happens when they decide to make you redundant, that you are redundant. It's always about you first and then your relationships. That's the gift that I have received. One of the greatest things about aging and being in your 60s, as I am now, is that you get to look back at your life and to clearly see the turning points that have assisted you to become who you are today. And you can clearly see the different people that you have been throughout your life. There are so many different life stages, and the more that we look back and learn from what has happened and to value the wisdom and the information and the mentors that have come in and out of your life to assist you greatly. And there have been so many turning points in my life that have assisted me to move beyond the guilt, the shame, and my neediness regarding Kim and my choice, my adoption choice. And it's important that we value each and every one of them because there are no coincidences in life. And I'm very grateful for my spiritual beliefs, my spiritual knowings. Now, just to be clear, I'm not talking religion. I'm talking about the higher purpose of who we are and why we're here and the purpose of us being here. Because I'm pretty sure that we don't just get one lifetime. And I'm pretty sure that we're not just here to have fun and to play out. I like to think of us being here playing a role, and we all have a purpose to our role, and we all can be who we came here to be. So when I look at the turning points, I can clearly see, even though it didn't work out that well for Kim, me choosing to move to Sydney to be there for Kim. Yes, there was a whole lot of stuff that came up for her, which wasn't ideal. But if we understood what we understood now, it would have all flown perfectly. But then everything didn't flow perfectly so that we could become who we are today and experience the turmoil, the tumultuous relationship that we lived for nearly 2 decades. Turning points. Dan passing was not good at all. But it helped me eventually to dive into me, into my loss, into all of the feelings that I had buried deep for so long and that I had to keep drowning with my abandonment behaviors, my avoidance behaviors, my I can't be that person. I can't honor that person. But she needs honoring because when I think back at and look at my strengths, I'm a really strong person. And yes, I had my opinions. And yes, when I was younger, my opinions were the only right opinions. But as I got older, I started to realize everyone's entitled to whatever they want to think, believe, know, just go for it. It doesn't affect me in any way. I'll listen, doesn't mean I have to take them on, but it's really important. So honoring every single person that I have been, and believe me, there's been many, many versions of me, many, many hairstyles, many, many body shapes as we have gone along our journey to being who I am now. Though my redundancy was a really fabulous turning point because it really assisted me to dive into me. And if you haven't done your dive into you, please do it because having a focus of continually being better than yesterday me is the most perfect way we can live our life because it helps us to continually look at all areas of our lives and to dive into it and make sure that one isn't thriving at the expense of the others. My career was thriving at the expense of every other area of my life. But the more I dived into me, the more I could see that my relationships needed a lot of work. And that assisted both Kim and I to come together, for me to apologize, for me to look at the not so ideal ways that I have been over the years, and how any avoidance tactic, whatever it is not serving you in any way. Yes, it's serving you to live totally in avoidance, but that's not what we're here for. We're not here for. We're here to experience life and to move along life and to create our most amazing version of us and to achieve whatever our life purpose is for this time. And it's okay if you don't believe that. That's fine. But life gets easier when you do believe you're here for a purpose. And it doesn't have to be this grand purpose. It can be something very simple. Having a loving relationship with your daughter after separation. That could be our whole purpose. I feel it goes beyond that, but that's okay. That's the starting point. I've got to create that loving relationship with my daughter before we can do what we came here to do. I am grateful that we now have a practice where we are open and honest with each other. We listen, we validate, we seek to understand continually, and we both know that we are here for each other. We're not going anywhere. We're here for each other. No matter what misunderstanding we have, we're here together. And we will always be here together. We've done the separation years of our life. We're never doing them again. We've learned from them. We've grown from them. We've looked at better ways of doing everything. And that's the most beautiful thing about understanding all of the turning points in your life. I am so grateful that I listened to me, to her, to my guides, whoever has given me advice and a different way of looking at things. I thank you, I honor you, I celebrate you, because we're in a really good place because of embracing the lessons that have come our way up until now, and will continue to do so. Given my journey to where we are today has definitely been a long and winding road, a tumultuous road at times, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of buried grief, a lot of buried longing, a lot of feelings that we were ashamed of, certainly a lot of things that have been left unsaid up until now. Thankfully, we have come together. Sometimes we look at it and we wonder how we got here, but we are here. And it was all because we always wanted to be together. And the stumbling blocks that were put along the road were for us to learn and grow and to figure out a better way to co-create our loving mother-daughter relationship. And through doing that, and look, we're still doing it. We'll always be doing it. There's always going to be something that'll come up. But through doing it, I had to find out more. It was just my curiosity. Yes, my curiosity got us here in the first place, and it's my continued curiosity that has assisted us to co-create the emotional fingerprint of an adoptee. I had to figure out what happened to her. And in doing so, I've learnt so much. I never knew that in 1968, they already understood that there was the adoption for the baby was causing them emotional and psychological trauma. I would never have found that out if I hadn't decided we have to dive further. We have to figure out what happened to you. And we knew from the start that it had to start from conception, that we creating the 8 life stages with the 8 emotional themes, we knew that we had to dive into it. So look at it from different angles, different perspectives for the adoptee into why they have become the way they are. Why do they think and feel? Why do they have these similar traits? Why do they go through these similar experiences, even though they are in different environments? But there's so many common things with the theme of adoptees. Our road was long before we could even sit together for more than a couple of hours without ending up walking away from each other, usually in tears. But we knew that we had lived it for a reason. We knew there was a reason why we had been through so much. We also knew there was a reason why I was so curious, because we needed to find this thread. It's time. It's time for society to move beyond the happy ever after adoption rhetoric that has been going on for centuries. It's time for everyone to understand that adoption begins with loss. Loss of their mother that they bonded with in utero, and for the mother and all of her extended family and the child's father's family as well as the father, it's loss. And it's not just loss at that time, it's a continued loss. It's a loss of not being there to see them grow, to help to shape them. It's a continual loss where you sit and you realize that you missed out on so much. That there is a place for adoption, but there is no place for the child to be emotionally and psychologically traumatized for the rest of their life. And that's what the emotional fingerprint of an adoptee is all about. It's a resource. It's an education. It's to assist you to understand a better way of nurturing a child after they have been separated for whatever reason from their biological family, especially their mother. That's what it is. And it's for so many people. It's not just for adoptees, it's for their biological parents, it's for their adoptive parents, it's for their partners, their friends, their extended family, and also for people who are supporting anyone in that list. Because we require support. We require a different way of looking at things. We require to deep dive into our beliefs and say, well, is that true? And then to find that lie in that belief, those LIE, that word that stands out right in the middle of belief. That's what it's about. It's a resource so that no one, no matter who they are or where they are through their adoption story, can stop and educate themselves and become aware of everything that happens, and then look at the better way of moving forward. Kim and I have experienced this life so we could come to this place. Lived experience will always outweigh a book education. And that's what it's about. It's about sharing our lived experience that we have come together to co-create the emotional fingerprint of an adoptee. We look forward to walking beside you.